Hello and welcome back to A Splash of Paint, where it's time for us to rejoin former SAA Artist of the Year Fraser Scarfe for the final finishing touches for today's stunning skyscape project.
So I just finished off these clouds last time you saw me, and what I'm going to do now is very quickly block in some dark shapes in my foreground here. Now I'm not really going to sort of finish these to any level, because all I'm looking to do is see how they affect the tones in my sky. So I'm just very quickly going to block in some colours in my foreground without sort of finishing them, because what you often find if you're doing a sky in a painting, you do your sky, get it looking lovely, but you leave the bottom blank. When you actually then go in and put colours into the foreground in your picture, they will alter how your sky looks, you know, so you may need to go back and change things. So just be conscious of that if you're doing landscapes, that, you know, it's worthwhile just blocking in at least some general colours in your foreground, just to see how they affect your sky. So all I'm looking to make here on my palette is a kind of ochre-y green. I've just used some yellow ochre, a touch of phthalo blue and some burnt umber. And I'm just going to use that to very quickly cover my sort of foreground area in my picture here. Just doing this very quickly, very loosely. Like I said, it's just going to be there to give me something to refer to when I'm finishing off my sky. So I'm just very quickly spraying my brush, which is giving me some moisture, allowing me to blend the paint out here. I'm just looking to cover roughly the entire bottom section of my foreground here. Loose greenish covering there. And in the actual finished painting, I'm going to have a sort of dark band of trees running all the way along underneath my horizon line. So I'm just going to add some burnt umber to that green colour that I've just mixed, and also block those in. Now again, not doing it with any sort of great care or detail, but just using this dark band of colour just as a reference so that I know how that's going to affect the composition of the painting, as it were, and the colours in my sky. So, touch more. And it loosens you up as well working like this. If you apply your paint quickly, sort of build up the whole image, you can quickly get a sense of how the painting's going to work. So don't always think that you've got to work in a sort of step-by-step way. It's really boring working like that. It's nice to go back and forth into different parts of the painting and see how they're going to work and see how they're going to develop. So I've put this dark band in here, and that's just going to represent where my band of trees are going to go in the final painting. And I'll also use some of this dark colour just to sort of give my foreground a bit more interest. Touch more burnt umber. Just making the immediate foreground slightly darker. And this painting's actually done from Primrose Hill in London, so there's quite a big sort of drop down, and then you're looking out towards the city. So the more sort of texture I get in my foreground, the better, really. Just making that slightly darker there. Like so. And then there's also a nice sort of big tree that sits somewhere in this area. So again, just going to block in the shape of where that tree might be, just so I've got an idea when I come to do the final picture. So I'll just grab a smaller brush and just do a few lines to just break this up slightly. So in the picture I'm referring to, there's a sort of path running across the painting, and some more paths down here in the distance. So I'm just going to pop a few lines in there just to break this area up slightly, and just use a few dark marks to break some of these tree shapes up down here as well. paint around a bit here just to get some texture in. So I'm just approaching this in a very sort of playful way, just taking a step back from time to time, just seeing what I might need to do just as a little visual guide for myself. That's down here. So that's blocked in and given me a rough idea of my foreground, and I can then build on that at a later date. But just going back to the sky, just really want to sort of give the sky a bit more clout. Now I've got these dark marks in that and instantly sort of changes the look of the sky. So I'm now thinking I need to sort of firm up some of these cloud shapes, make them slightly darker maybe. So I'm going to grab some more of my Payne's grey colour, maybe a touch of burnt umber as well. And I'll maybe just go in and just use that colour to just give some of these clouds a bit more punch, a bit more weight, and a bit more contrast. So I'm just going in with my brush and just going to give that a spray, get some moisture on there, and that will just allow me to re-blend everything nicely together. And the moisture on my brush is just allowing me to go in and just re-blend everything together. And of course you could spend more time doing this, you don't have to sort of work at this speed, but you know, if you are just blocking ideas in for a painting, you know, there's no point spending hours and hours doing it. You know, you can quite quickly with acrylics just get a general idea of how things are going to work without needing to sort of sit down and spend an afternoon doing something. So it's good to sort of loosen you up, try things out, and just have a bit of a play with the paint really, and see some of the things you can do with it. And then just to put some sort of highlights in and maybe a bit of warmth into the picture, I'll maybe just go down towards my horizon line here, and I'm just going to grab a bit of Naples yellow, which is always good for sort of highlights and warmer tones, and I'm just going to mix that with a tiny touch of crimson. So we've got a sort of warm yellow tint, but just leaning towards pink slightly. Just going to wipe any excess off my brush there. Just trying to get all the sort of paint off it. So what I'm actually going to do is sort of wash some of this warm colour on here. And then just down towards that horizon line, I can just take some of that warmer colour in on the end of my brush, just to kill some of that white down there. A touch more here. And maybe take some of that along here as well. Just looking to give that whole area a bit of warmth as well. And then to sort of separate some of the clouds, give them a bit more volume, just going to add a bit of titanium white to that colour that I've just been using. And then what I can do with that is just go in and underneath some of these cloud shapes, maybe just pick out where they might be catching light. So when you start doing your highlights in your clouds, that's really often when they start to take form and actually come to life for you. So if you are doing a sky and it doesn't look quite right, you know, don't despair, because it may not be until you've done the highlights that things actually start to gel and come together. So I'm just using these highlight colours on the end of my brush to just pick out the edges of some of these cloud shapes here. While I've got that colour on there, I want to put a few warmer touches into my foreground, as it were, so it might be a good chance to just mark in a few warmer areas down there as well. Remember, I'm not looking to sort of finish off these areas, just to sort of mark in where things are going to go, just to help me in the final painting. few strokes of that colour here. Maybe a few up here. It's really just a case of looking at your painting, seeing what needs to go where, and then adjusting things accordingly. And just to finish off, I'll just get some more titanium white, just to give us a slightly brighter highlight. And then just maybe along the edge of this cloud here, we'll make that slightly lighter with some white highlights. Okay, I'll probably leave that there. So hopefully that's just given you an idea of some of the ways that I use acrylic paint to work out ideas for a more finished painting and to try things out. And also some of the ways you can quite quickly build up a convincing sky using acrylics. But remember, you know, you can always change acrylics and always go back and sort of edit them later. So you don't have to sort of get things done in any particular order when you're painting with acrylics. So I've taken this initial sketch that I did and worked on it in the studio and built it up to a finished painting. So like I was saying, you can use a sketch to map out colours and shapes and see how things are going to work compositionally. And then in the studio, you can really go to town, once you've done that, building up a finished painting.
Great technique there, Fraser. Really like how the colours in the foreground complement the highlights in the clouds to warm up the sky. A really great painting. And one you can go back to at any time. Really fantastic techniques. Right, time for our final break now, folks, but join us in part 4 when we'll be shining the spotlight on the SAA professional artist and instructor, Gregory Wellman, in our regular introducing feature. And I'll be delving deep into the splashy paint postbag to answer a few more of your artistic dilemmas. Join us after the break.